Yo, 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 yo. Welcome to another episode for Open for Discussion. I'm your boy, C. Maurice Ball. And y'all know what to do when you see the thing scroll at the bottom. Hit subscribe, hit the bell so you could be notified and join our community so you could be a part of all the amazing interviews that we're going to have throughout this season. And today, I got an amazing dynamic young lady who is out in this world helping people deal with grief, changing lives, putting people in the right direction. And she is doing it majorly across the country and even across the world. We're going to get to her shortly and we're going to have a good time with her. And she's going to just share and impart some things. And I'm looking forward to it. So without further ado, kick that intro. Well, I am introducing to some and presenting to others, Miss Tina Fornwald. How are you today?
I am well. I love the energy, Maurice. I love the energy. You can make me want to level up on my next podcast. I feel like I'm like too calm. I'm like, okay.
I think a lot of it is if you come in and I'm just like, well, this is I got to kind of set the tone. I gotta get that energy up. But
Okay.
I appreciate you pulling up on my podcast, and I normally have a crazy story as to how I met everybody that shows up on my podcast, and this is not a crazy story. We actually was invited to be on a grief panel together on TikTok.
Yes.
And from there, I just kind of started listening to her how she do get down, and then she asked me to pull up on her TikTok live and just kind of discuss grief and things like that. And I was even honored to be asked to be a part of that. So then I was like, hey, I need you to be on my podcast because you got a story. And she was like, you know what, we're gonna do this thing, but it's got to be in 2025. Can't be now. She was real, and she was like, look. And it can't be in the first 2 weeks of 2020. It got to be the third week. I was like, hey, I'm cool with it. Whatever's going to work around your schedule. And so here we are. We get a chance to sit down and talk. So where are you currently at?
I am mentally or physically.
Both.
Mentally, I am in a place of expansion. I am in a place of really trying to do the last three things that God told me to do instead of trying to rush to the next thing. I'm in a place. And so going back to the 2 weeks, trying to make space for rest, trying to make space to decompress and give myself opportunity to enjoy what is instead of always trying to get to the next thing. And that takes work for me. That is not my natural mode of operation. So I'm trying to get better at that. Physically, I'm in Norfolk, Virginia.
Norfolk, Virginia. Where the Navy base is.
Yeah, well, actually, there is every base here. Every military is represented in this area between Norfolk, Hampton Roads, Richmond. It is a very well saturated military place.
Oh, okay. I didn't. When you hear Norfolk, I only think about the Navy.
Well, that's because you was in the Navy.
That's because I was in the Navy.
People that were not in the Navy think of Langley Air Force Base.
Oh yeah, that is out there.
There's Coast Guard, there's Army representation. I mean, there is a huge military presence in this area.
Oh, okay. So you are in VA, and you're doing big things out there, and we're going to get to that. So in your being, and you said some things. You said you're trying to train yourself on taking time to smell the roses for the most part and slow yourself down. How hard is that for you?
If you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, it would have been extremely hard. But I've had some experiences in life that showed me the value of rest.
Mm-hmm.
We underestimate the value of rest and sitting still. And just like before we started this, I was telling you, I stayed in bed. Now, Monday through Friday, my jam is getting up at 4 a.m. and doing different things. But I'm learning to kick it back on Saturdays and just lay in bed, relax, and just take it easy because I cannot pour out of an empty cup. And if I don't take time to restore mentally, physically, and spiritually, what am I even doing? So
Mm-hmm.
that concept, I know, making time now to say, what am I going to do when I'm resting? Because resting can, to me, literally just be laying in bed and doing nothing. Where before resting was like low key, just doing these low maintenance things.
Right.
And nope. And so it's getting
Right.
easier. Life has taught me some lessons that made that possible.
And we're going to touch on some of that, but I just thought that was key because it's like, you can get so in a routine of being active
Hmm.
that even when you're resting, you're still active. And I had to tell my wife this the other day. She was like, wasn't feeling well, and I was like, "Why don't you just stay in bed? Like, don't be working. Don't go get your laptop and sit here, because you ain't really resting. You still working. You just ain't working at your desk. You
Right.
kind of you over here and you doing laundry and you folding clothes and you just sit your butt down somewhere and do nothing. Turn on Netflix or something and veg out for a day or so. Eh, and because everything that you got your hands on and the place that you're spending, they'll still be there when you get back up.
See, that right there is a reality. Where I work, I am the supervisor lead of about 24 people, and we recently had someone pass away. And I've never been in a role where I had an employee that transitioned from this world and being there supporting their family. And I remember the conversations I had with this gentleman saying, you know, life is short. And he was like, well, I got to work. I got to do this. And I was thinking, do we though? Like he was
Mhm.
kind of set up already. But because we're always trying to get that next bag or that next level, I think we've lost sight sometimes of when it's really enough. And that's okay. And
Mhm.
we want and I am extremely impressed with his ability to be a provider for his family and set up the things that need to happen. But it just really made me be reflective that a job is a job, and when you are gone, somebody else will fill that space. But no one else can be his wife's husband.
Right.
No one else can be, I mean, she could get remarried, but no one will be that husband. No one else will be the parent to his children. And I think life just teaches us, what are we going to make a priority? I remember when I stayed home full time with our children, we had to roll back our finances because the priority was mothering and parenting. That means we had to say no to some financial things. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to identify, what does rest look like? What are the choices that I'm making? And what are the trade-offs for those things?
Yeah, that's some good information right there. That's really good. So in your family structure, I know we just kind of did a hard left. In your
I'm
family
sorry.
structure, where do you fall at in your siblings? Are you the oldest? Are you the middle? Are you the
I am,
only?
oh yeah, not only. I am one of five siblings. And I am the second from the oldest. So we used to always say, like, we didn't care if we didn't have to play anybody else. We had our own tribe in the house. It was like, we good right here. And to that point, my middle sister lives next door. My family is my core.
Okay, okay. So were y'all close? Like
Yes.
growing
Like,
growing up, were y'all really
mhm.
tight and everything?
I
That's
mean, tight is fighting, arguing, harassment.
normal
Uh,
stuff.
oh yeah, but my siblings are my best friends.
That's
That, I mean,
awesome.
I'm just texting them this morning before I even got on here. Like, if I don't hear from one of my siblings within 24 hours, that would be just odd.
That's an amazing relation. You normally don't hear um, multiple siblings. They're normally grouped off. The younger, older. They're normally
Oh,
sectioned off to have those relationships. It's never like all five of us is really cool. It's like no, because of the age difference, normally is kind of separates that. So that's amazing that y'all are that close. What was life growing up? Let's say you know at one point you were what, the baby. right? And then you had three younger siblings. And at what point, like, were you in middle school when that happened? How old were you when life shifted and you were no longer the baby?
So let me circle back a little bit. My dad was married before, so our
Okay.
oldest sister came into our life that I can remember, like my preteen ages, and just became like, "Ooh, I have a big sister." So I started off thinking I was the oldest sibling, and my youngest sister came along. I think I was so we have a 5.5 year difference, and I was like, What is that? What we doing?" Like, and I was like, we having another child, and there are pictures like with my mom and her being pregnant, and just a lot of different things as different siblings were coming along. And there are tons of stories where I teased Yolanda or did different things, but my best friend is, and let me circle back also. There are different groupings with us. Like sometimes I'll text this one, or different siblings, like people have different relationships that you build with them.
Mhm.
So everybody may not be tight, totally collective, but when situations have happened in our life, we rally like a full core. That my children and my sister's children, they call us the siblings because we operate as a single unit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So growing up, you have this addition. Let's say what was your house like? What was your structure like? Did you have two parents?
My dad, yes, I was raised by both my parents.
Okay.
Our dad of Chicago, Illinois, born and raised. Our dad was my parents met in a hospital. They both worked there. My dad eventually took a job, Chicago Transportation Authority, so driving CTA bus, and he retired from the Chicago Police Department. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. When I was born, my mother started staying home, and I am extremely grateful for that. So we lived on the west side of Chicago. Then we eventually moved to the south side where my parents purchased a home. We walked to school, come back home for lunch because my mom had lunch, and that was the dynamics of my upbringing to the utmost.
How important do you think it is to have a two parent home? And the second part of that question, how important do you think it is to have a active father?
You know, that is a good question. My dad had a lot of faults
Mhm.
and a lot of things that I can see that made me look at myself to make sure I'm addressing the challenges in my life. But I am glad that my dad was present in my life. I believe we gain our identity from our parents. And when our parents are missing, we are seeking to understand a part of ourselves that we feel like we don't understand. I believe women that are holding it down are single mothers or single fathers. They are doing an excellent job of
Mhm.
filling in the gap, and their community and their tribe comes around them to support different areas where they may not be able to hold it up. But it takes two to make a child. So there's, to me, organically something beneficial about both parents being involved in the process of rearing and raising a child.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Because sometimes you have you see people that have that single parent household and you
Mhm.
miss one of the dynamics. You miss one of the mostly it's a single mom raising children, and you miss that affirmation and validation, which means the course that most of them take normally is seeking that affirmation and validation from a male. But because you had that, your course probably didn't go down that path because you had the consistent active father in there that was poured into you. That's good. That's good. That's good. So when you were as you were growing up, and let's say eighth grade, you sitting around and you're thinking, man, I'm at that point where you were the middle child at that point, right?
Yeah. Well, I was at that point middle school, so eighth grade. I was just about still the oldest because our sister had not been introduced to our full family. So I was the oldest of my mother's children.
Okay. Eh, are you like that? Were you the oldest that was like bullying all, your little, your siblings, and were you running everything, and were you Debo?
So by default, yes, I am that older sibling.
Okay. It- I think that's a rites of passage, right? Like my older sister was like that. It was just like you took all the candy, she took all the stuff that was meant for all of us. We get one piece, she had a whole bag, and then threatened us to, hey, you better not tell because I'm gonna beat you up. So we sitting hostage in the house.
Yeah. You learn how well, probably my mom was present a lot, so I didn't get a lot of opportunities to exercise my full oldest sibling privileges, but I did take them when they were possible.
Were you a good student?
Horrible.
Okay.
And and that is
What were your challenges? Like what were some of the things you were dealing with? Um,
um some of the challenges at home
no,
led
just
into
you can kind of where because your challenges at home kind of
pour
spills
into
over to
every
your challenges in school,
yes.
right? So
Mhm.
so and so how was that? Were there's things that you were not able to do at home that spilled over that made you like a fighter at school, or you just rebelled because of some things that
The
was happening?
challenges that I experienced most in my youth was strong, intense harassment. There was a lot of darky, blacky, you're this, and being teased from grammar school, um, middle school. So we went to school from kindergarten to eighth grade,
Mhm.
and constantly being teased for being dark, constantly being bullied, constantly having situations where just being treated less than. And I remember we were in eighth grade and our teacher was reading the assignments for going into high school, saying who was going to go to what high school. And we were sitting in the classroom and the assignments had been, we had heard what school you were going to next. And this one person said, okay, I'm going to this school with Blackie Tina. We're going to continue this. And I was like, I can't do this for another 4 years.
Wow.
I cannot take this level and I'm not. And the teacher left out. And so the chairs that we sat in were those chairs where it was connected all in one piece.
Uh-huh.
And I got up in a rage I had never experienced before. And I beat that person to near pulp. And when the teacher came back in, she looked at me and she kind of gave me a smirk like, okay, I see what you did there. She sent us both to the principal office. I
Just
went,
smack you on your head.
like,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Mhm.
because I was like, I was prepared that I wasn't going to graduate, but I was not going to take that anymore. And she was just like, sent us to the office. I could imagine what went on in the teachers' lounge. Like Tina, like finally came up.
Put her hands on him. Yeah.
Okay, and so the girl was suspended, and I was just sent home. But when I came back, it was like, okay, we see what we not gonna do no more. But I still experienced some teasing in high school to the point that I just wasn't a fan of any of that. That kept me from actually going back to my high school reunion because I was
Mm.
like, for what? Like why? But my sister really enjoys that. So I went back to that with her and had a lot of conversations about what that looked like and people apologized and made a video. I think you may have seen that on my TikTok talking about, when you go places and just a lot of that conversation that I am not that girl then, but I am glad that I rescued her and I love her and she's a part of who I am.
You took a moment to stand up and create a voice,
Yes.
and because that can be perpetuated. I was interviewing a young lady, and she told me kind of the same similar situation, that they start bullying this young lady,
Mm,
in all through middle school and all through high school. They bullied her, and they never thought about the damage that it
oof,
created. And she said that when she seen the young lady at the high school reunion, the lady was kind of hesitant to come over and say anything because this group of girls bullied this young lady. and she came in and just kind of sharing where she's at. But she also said, "Hey, that put me in therapy for years." At years, so she was like, I was in therapy for years because of that. And as kids, we don't pay attention to the damage that we do now, right? Like if
Right.
a kid's being bullied, we can kind of see it. But back then, you just kind of had to deal with it or fight to get but there was still the emotional scar. So did any of
Yes.
that even after you beat this young lady up, what other things lingered from that? Were you snappy at this point now? Like, don't ever say anything to me, or like, what did it do to you? What was the long-term effects of that middle school incident
The
being?
long, the long-term effect was me doubting my self-worth. The long-term impact of that was thinking that I wasn't pretty. The long-term effect of that was me not being comfortable around people literally that were different skin tones than me, because that lingering concept that that's how these people act and other people will act that way. The long-term impact of that also made me determine to lean into my faith more. I remember accepting Christ as my Savior in my senior year of high school because I knew life had to have more than what I had experienced. And so then when I leaned into my faith, that gave me a greater sense of who I am truly, not what the world was trying to tell me that I was. And I can see also in just different choices that I've made in life, there had been a struggle of, am I this or am I that? And constantly remembering and telling myself, I am who the word of God says that I am. I am not the lie that the enemy has been trying to hold me down with, and coming to terms with that reality. That is how I can see is that I've never thought of that before until you asked me that question. So thank you.
Uh, and so now did you take any of that at home too, though? Like, because you were being bullied, how did you take that home? Did you have that conversation with your parents? Did you have a conversation with your siblings? Did y'all, like, we gonna rally the troops and we about to storm and go, like, you what was the because when you go home, it's supposed to be your safe haven. And then we
Mhm.
don't really want to tell our parents what was going on at school. And you're a few years, you're just a little older than me, so it was different. Like, now it's okay to have those I mean, and I'm just speaking for my household, it
Right.
probably been okay to have those conversations, but I didn't think there were. So some of the stuff I just sat on. So did you just sit on it and kind of just figure out your own coping mechanisms?
No, because it was ever present that it was happening. Being
Okay.
chased home 2 blocks home, like coming in the house. What happened? There were some girls across the street that would pick on my sister and I. My dad was like, "You're not coming to the house until you beat that tail." So it
Yeah.
became like, okay,
Here we go.
we got to do what need to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is interesting because that's not, but I think there's something to be said about being true about how you feel and dealing with those feelings.
Yeah.
One of the people that was teasing my dad got out the rock some balloons that you kind of put on your hand, rock'em sock'em robots. They had these
Yeah.
punching, and you put those on, and he made us fight it out in the backyard. And there's something to be said. I think there's a lot of repressed feelings that people are feeling some way, so they may get them out in other different means, like keyboard heroes are way different, because it's like you wouldn't say that to my face, what you just typed
Right.
right there. So
Right.
there's some things to be said about that. So it was not it wasn't hidden from my home. My dad was like, you going back out there and deal with that. And
Yeah.
it made me also have the concept that I can't run from problems in life, that I do have to deal with them. That was an example of one, but it carried over that I will, to this day, I will have difficult conversations versus avoiding them and deal with the elephant in the room.
That's a good that's good. I mean, I just put those pieces together, like, well, yeah, it was teaching you how to deal with conflict resolution. Because because my dad did the same thing. Oh no, you ain't coming. You either fight him or you fight me. What's your option? Oh, now I'm about to go back outside. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, we gonna handle that. And but you know what? What could have also happened, and I've seen this, that becomes the norm, and now I just fight every time I get pushed back in the corner.
So to that point, with my first husband, my late husband, that was a thing between the difficulties with my dad and growing up in life. I remember him telling me, "I'm not your enemy. You don't have to fight me. I'm on your team." And me just sitting back and listening to him and going, "Tina, relax. This is you didn't marry your dad." And when I say I didn't marry my dad 6'1", black man in Chicago, my late husband, white guy, 5'9". Like, I made sure that I just didn't subconsciously repeat the pattern. I looked at what wasn't working for me and made sure I obtained something that was totally different. It did work for me. So that did stay with me for a while. And there are parts still now, 58, that I have to fight that back.
Mm.
And in some of my journals and my prayer time, God's saying, "I will fight your battles for you." And my clap back in that Chicago girl, like, "Well, I got this." And God is like, "But you don't, though." And
Right.
him walking me through and sitting me down and just trying to follow God and saying, "See, I took care of that for you better than you were able to." So it is something that is still a part of me that I have to be mindful of.
And as you transition through high school, you had were you an athlete? Were you active? I mean, now you still kind of dealing with that, but were you did you find other ways to kind of fit in through, being drill team or playing basketball or whatever to kind of say, I kind of found my group that I'm hanging with that kind of eased the pain through high school?
That's a good question. I tried a couple of different things. I was on stage crew. I was a drum majorette, but the place where I landed, I was the candy girl. And how this happened, um, next to our school was a wholesale warehouse, and they sold boxes of Snickers, M&Ms, and usually the only way that students were allowed over there is when the cheerleaders or the sports events had a organized activity that they were given rights. Their coaches would go over there. Unbeknownst to me, our cleaning lady in the school also did cleaning at that location. And I would just say hi to her. I would speak to her, talk about what was going on with her children. She wasn't invisible. And to
Okay.
mostly everyone else, they just ignored her or treated her badly. And one day, I can't remember what the conversation came about. And she said, "You want to go and buy some candy over there and sell it?" And I was like, "Hmm, I do." She took me over there before school, before everything opened. She introduced me to the managers and everything and said, "I really like for her to be able to come over here and do that." I was over there taking my allowance, tripling my money in a week because I was purchasing M&Ms with and without peanuts and
Come on.
Snickers. So everybody would just go, "Where the candy girl at? What period is she in? Like, where is she at?" So throughout high school, I was the candy girl selling that. And one day my dad came up and he was looking for me, and I can't remember what it was. And it was like, "Oh," he was like, "You see my daughter?" And he's like, "Oh, the candy girl." And like, "Oh, she is such and such." He was like, "What?" Because had no clue. And so I'm sitting there, I'm selling my candy, and this big hand comes in. I'm like, "Wow!" And I was like, "Hey, Dad, uh, what are you doing here?" And he was like, so he let me know, finish my sales. He was like, "How much money you had?" Because my bag had money in it. And he was like, "You don't need an allowance anymore." I was like, "Why are you cutting me off? Like,
Right.
I'm over here entrepreneurship, like doing a dang old thing, and you cutting off my seed money, like." And he was like, "I wonder why there was so much change in your bag when I picked it up one time." I was like, "See, I need to control my money better." But so that was the way I fit in. And it's interesting because my undergrad is finance and accounting. So money became my jam.
That so you became the hustler, the candy
Yes.
hustler. But was you eating your own product?
No. Let me back up. I every now and then, but I was selling that. Yeah. That was making
That's
all that jam.
that
I
that's
would have to
that's
go out to eat. Like there was a corner store. Like I was over there eating the pizza puffs and having some lunch. That besides what my parents had given me the money to eat in the cafeteria, I was like, "Oh no, I'm over here." I thought I was living large,
balling.
but with my shrimp and chips and everything over there at lunchtime.
Oh, that's funny. You became the kingpin. The
Yep. And
kingpin.
even when I was at the class reunion, next if I go to class reunion next time, I should bring Snickers and M&Ms and pass them out.
Yeah.
It was like the candy girl came, and I was like, that is so funny. Yes.
That is funny. So you go through high school. Were you a good school? Did you evolve into a good student in high school?
Nope, because my main concern in high school was we were raised with the idea that when you get 18, you need to get the MF out of my parents' house. And I
Oh.
was thinking, what am I going to do when I get 18? And that was lingering in the back of my mind. And the reality of that, I didn't focus on high school or the grades. I didn't comprehend what good grades would do for me later in life.
Uh-huh.
And so that correlation didn't happen in high school, it happened later.
So what kind of pressure, because there's some people that's going to be listening to this who still live by that mantra.
Mm.
At 18, you up out of here with no plan. So you got to kind of figure it out. What kind of pressure did you have as as 16 peeled off and 17 peeled off? What was your internal battle, and what was your restless nights like? What was you processing to kind of figure out, like, okay,
All right, you
it,
may not be ready for this answer, but I'm gonna give you the cold truth.
I need the real truth.
I remember sitting in my room. My sister and I had bunk beds. I had the lower bunk, and she was on the top because the oldest don't have to climb.
Right. Privilege.
And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed night after night, thinking, "What are you going to do?" And I literally thought, well, I mean, prostitution pays a lot of money, but I can't have them old dudes jigging on me like that. That is just gross. Number two was I had this little job at Mickey D's, and I was calculating how long it would take to get to be crew chief versus manager and how much money I would need for rent. And that wasn't working. And I was like, I could go into the military. And I wrestled with those three things over and over and over. And then I took the ASVAB test and I went into the Army, and it was like best decision ever in my entire life. I didn't really understand the concept and the importance of serving our country and to be in the military and that honor to be able to serve, and the taking me outside of Chicago and seeing the world and meeting other people from other places and just opening me up to not be so closed that what I experienced in my block was not what the entire world had to offer. And to just realize things that I had seen on TV, that I actually saw those places in person and traveled and expanded my horizons and just opened me up to see what the world really had to offer.
You said something key, and I think a lot of people miss this. Exposure is very important, right? You said it's more than just my block.
Yes.
Like, the world is bigger than my block. That
Absolutely.
mentality, though, is can hinder you big time, right? Like, I don't know anything outside of a 5 mile radius. So this what happens here is the world. So when you get outside of that and then you come back in, you
Oof.
start thinking like, yo, like, Miss Betty over here been here 50 years and ain't never lived nowhere else. Like, kind of stuck. So going out, you get a chance to blossom. Out all the branches, what stood out about the Army, though? Like, what was it when you could have went to the Navy, you could have went to the Coast Guard? What did the Army say or do that made you say, you know what, that's what I want to do?
So for the record, I can swim, so that wasn't a deterrent. I just want to say that it was. Sometimes there people think, well, maybe they couldn't
And
swim.
that is the reason why people don't go to the Navy, because they can't swim. 100%.
That is not it. We used to go to this local park and we took swimming lessons. So check block. That wasn't the reason. It was the job that they offered. The job
Okay.
in logistics and supply resonated with me, and the different things that that job gave me an experience to do, and it just intrigued me. And that was the pull.
Okay. That'll do it. And now like logistics now is like the main thing. Is a huge thing, but I didn't know nothing about logistics back then. That was well, nothing. So you go right out to high school. Did you
Yep.
take a gap year, or
Nope.
so you graduated and took the ASVAB and left?
Not only that, I took the ASVAB. My parents signed to allow me to go into the military early. I had advanced sign up, and I left my parents' house and moved in with my older sister because I needed to exhale. I could not
Okay.
take the pressure any longer. My older sister was there, and unbeknownst to me, there was some back conversation she was having with our dad to make sure this was okay. But I went to stay with her because the pressure was just too much.
I can only imagine, like, you know, being told at 18, you gotta. I'm just really learning how to tie my shoes.
No, no, I wasn't told at 18. I was told once I became a teenager. That was being told constantly. And going back to a question you asked me, I didn't realize how that pattern existed. So when my late husband and I were having children, when they started getting that age, I started repeating that same thing. And he pulled me to the side. He was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, he was like, that no, we're not doing that. And I was like, everybody didn't get told that. We never had that conversation. And he
Mm,
said, no, my parents never told me that. And it shifted again, my perspective, not bucking back, but saying the world is bigger than what I knew. Concepts. You can talk to somebody you've never spoken to and learn something if you're willing to realize you don't know everything. And
for
once he
sure.
shifted that position, the idea of how do we prepare our children, because when they don't know how to tie their shoelaces, what do we start doing to equip them to be independent, successful individuals? And it changed my mindset about parenting, realizing that wasn't an absolute response. And
Right.
that just changed my perspective.
Right. And I think that the intent was well. It's kind of like you're kind of grown now, so you got to go out here and fend for yourself. And most parents, my parents came out of the same kind of generation that your parents were in, and it was if you'll figure it out. But I don't want to have to go out here and figure. There's no way I could have sent my 18-year-old son. He's 19 now, but sent my 18-year-old son out without a plan. Now it's like let's create a plan. If you want to leave at
Yes.
18, let's walk through some things. But to just send your child out without any kind of plan or understanding of finances or credit or anything like that, and just say go learn it the hard way, nah, that's failure. That is a they gonna hate you.
Literally. We started to making sure everything we've learned to try to share with them, to leverage them mentally, physically, spiritually, economically,
Mhm.
what to do to help them to leap past wherever we started at.
Mhm. So as you was processing all this information and all this other stuff, did that create some kind of barrier between you and your parents?
My ability to say I wasn't going to take some things that I had taken before became very strong.
Hmm.
Um, I saw my self worth. I saw what I was not going to allow anyone to make me feel like I was going backwards. It required for me to have some conversations about behavior in the past that was no longer acceptable in this current version. Um, I think we worked through the best that we could. Unfortunately, when you have been the same person for so long, you're sometimes not willing to change. And me being faith based in the word of God, the Bible's talk, a lot of the struggle was what does that look like to honor my parents that my days may be long upon the earth, but now allow myself to be devastated, disrespected, mistreated, and create some balance in that. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
forgiveness existed, but that pattern was continued. So I had to decide how much I was going to allow to keep coming into my space. And one of the things that made it apparent, my late husband was like, when you deal with your parents, that pressure and that behavior, you show up like that. So we need to change that because that's not doing well for us. And when he made that relevant to me and I could see that, then I had to start seeing what was I going to choose, a behavior that was continually being unhealthy and not serving me well,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
start parceling that out and being reasonable with that.
Mm, that's good. Did so as you start to make those moves and you go out, you come back, you done got built yourself up. Were the initial conversations that where um you were still trying to fit yourself in that box until you grew,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
absolutely not. No,
No,
that
okay,
box was destroyed. That box
okay,
was gone. The
okay,
concept was we not doing this anymore.
okay,
And then it finally got to the part to go, Tina, they're going to be who they're going to be. You need to just figure out how much you're going to expose yourself to it and what
okay,
that looks like. But
okay,
no, no longer trying to fit myself. That was over.
okay. So you go military. You in the military. Is that where you met your husband?
I did. I did.
Okay. Your late husband. I'm sorry. Then
Mhm.
how was that? Like you're this dark young lady, and you're tall and everything, and you got this 5'9" white guy. How did-
I'm 5'9" too, so
but
we were the same
that's
height.
still. I mean, so y'all the same height, right?
Right.
But to him, you know, like you probably Amazon side. You know what I mean? Like you know, come on. You're like, hey, she tall. Like, no, we the same height, bro. How was that? How was the initial um interaction? Because you came from Chicago. It wasn't too much interracial dating on the south side of Chicago.
Not at all.
So what was that like initially?
So our initial interaction, so we lived in the same barracks and sort of like college dorms. So I'm sorry, hold
Uh-huh.
on 1 second. And we had some mutual friends that were watching movies in somebody's room. And so there probably maybe about 15 people all in one room, people on different beds, sitting down on the floor in chairs. And I was in one space. I went to the restroom. And when I came back, I was sitting on the bed next to Mark. And he was talking. I'm like, bro, I'm trying to listen to, the movie. And he's trying to strike up a conversation. And I was talking about, I've been in the gym and working out. And he was like, I can massage your back. I was like, okay, it's a room full of people. And I was like, okay, he did that pretty good. He did a good massage. And so then we started noticing each other. But I was like, he 5'9". Like I wanted somebody 6'3", 6'2". Like, I want to be able to wear heels. I want to be, all that other stuff. I'm like 5'9", like, and people kept saying, you should talk to him. And I was like,
He
well,
5'9".
eventually, obviously I did.
Right.
And it was just easy to talk with him. It was no longer a thing of color. Obviously, was, but it wasn't something that was the forefront of my mind. It was the ability to be who I was. And I do believe that going back to patterns, the idea that I had been teased so much from, unfortunately, people of color, that created a safe space because there wasn't any tease in there. And actually, I had been dating a Caucasian guy before Mark. That guy was on TDY, and I was like, kind of just enjoying doing myself and hanging out and things like that. And when he started trying to talk to me, I was like, "Well, I'm dating such and such." He was like, "Well, he's not here." I'm like, "Why does he know that?" And he got his way in there. Um, Also, he was very brazen. We went on a date and we were in Pizza Hut and we were sitting there talking. First time ever I saw somebody cutting pizza with a fork and knife. And I was like, okay, what's up with this dude? But I was like, we're gonna see how this goes. I go to the bathroom and I come back. When I'm walking down towards the table, he's looking at me really hard. And I'm like, okay, he feeling me? He was like, you have toilet paper at the bottom of your shoe. I was like, awkward, awkward, awkward. And I was like, well, this may be our last date.
That's funny. So now how was it when y'all kicking it And did y'all get married in the military?
He was out of the military. I was still
Okay.
in.
Okay. And how long did y'all kick it before y'all got married?
Um, hmm. I want to say so. We met. Then he got orders to Honduras. I was in Korea. Interesting. Maybe about 3 years.
And
I never
okay.
looked at the timeline. I have to go back and look at it. I could be wrong. So
Wow.
3 years ish.
Okay. Now y'all get married, and then when you take him home to meet your people, how was that?
No. Not after that. While we were dating. So the first time he met my parents, I had orders to go to Korea, and he came to Chicago. I went to Chicago for leave before going to Korea, and he came to visit. And the first time that I know of a white person being in my parents' house, and I heard my dad code switch how he was talking. I was like, "Sir, I have never heard that octone level coming out of your mouth. What are we doing?" And when Mark shook his hand, my dad said, "Oh, I thought you were taller." And Mark said, "I thought you were too." I was like, "Handle the business. You got this." And,
Okay.
and I remember him wearing a gold chain, and we still laugh about this now. It was like when the herringbone, and one of my siblings goes, "Is that real gold, mister?" I was like, "You guys are embarrassing me." But we actually had our first. Mark was a photographer in the military, and he had his camera with her, and we took family photos, which is still like the only family photos we have of everybody because everybody was there and took pictures that day.
That is so of course you coming from Chicago. Where was he from?
Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. And let me be clear. Yeah, it sounded like Mayberry, and that's what it was. So
Yeah.
we were dating. We were in Aberdeen, Proving Ground, Maryland. That's where we were stationed. And one way or another, we had an accident. He had a Pontiac Fiero, and we were taking the Fiero back to Pennsylvania to trade out a car from his parents. And I was like, "Your parents got another car you could trade out?" I'm like, "What are we doing? Like, who lived like okay?" But when we got to Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, there were not a lot of people looking like me in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, let alone traveling with Mr. Mark.
Right.
And I remember going, "Oh, I bet all the birds are getting off the phone lines because the phone lines are ringing like Martin just brought home him a piece of look who's coming to dinner tonight." And we had met somebody at the gas station, one of his brothers, and they looked at me and they just kept looking at Mark. I was like, "I know he see me. You know he see us. I know he see us over here." And I was just like, "This?" I said, "You sure about this?" Because he was like, I remember being on the phone. He's like, "I'm coming back with my girlfriend Tina." I was like, "Did you mention your girlfriend Tina?"
Right.
He go, "No, I mentioned it." I was like, "Oh, okay. This about to be
The
interesting."
shock and
And it
awe
was,
treatment. So you know when in dating like that, we are way more receptive than the other side.
I can say that.
Really?
I don't know. I
I
think
I I, I
equal tension and love. I mean, from my lived experience, I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
other
yeah,
friends.
yeah. So you felt like it was just as much. He felt just as out of place in Southside Chicago than you felt in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
We went to go see The Color Purple in, we call it Evergreen Plaza, but AKA Ever Black Plaza. Now,
Evergreen.
I
Yeah.
walk out of seeing Color Purple and I'm just thinking about everything. And he's walking in the midst of, he was like, "Tina." Like we kind of got disconnected because you're floating in the crowd of people. And he's like
Right.
trying not to talk too loud. I remember I was going to a restaurant and he was going in and he said, "Can I have some tea?" And they just started speaking Spanish to him because surely this white dude was not in the south side of Chicago. So no, he was kind of afraid. So it was funny because we would sometimes we go places, it was totally all white, like we went skiing. And I was like, "I am not getting out this vehicle till I see some black people come through this ski resort." And he said, "Are you serious?" I said, 100%. We sat there till 30 minutes. I was like, "Oh, okay, we can leave now." Because I was like, I am not about to be the only person out here. No,
Did the cultural differences uh, have an effect when you first got married?
it did not. Because we were still in this military environment where it's very a mixed culture, and the people that we knew were from all over the places, so it was not a big thing.
Okay. Okay. Did so so how long were you married before you had your first child?
Ooh, now you're trying to make me do math, Maurice. I want to say 5 years.
Okay. That's a good time. Y'all got a chance to kind of get to
Hmm.
know each other and do some single stuff without, pressures of being a parent.
I wanted to have children right away. He was like, "Calm down," and I was like, and then after a year, or so I was like, then I was like, "Do we even need to have kids at all?" Because I was like, I don't know, like this okay, but we did eventually. Yes,
So and so y'all were married. How long were y'all married before he
we were
transitioned?
married for 29 years and together for 32.
Wow, 29 years. 20, that's a long time.
And it doesn't even seem like that. It blows my mind when I say those numbers. I'm like, whose life? What? Like, really? I mean, I'm
That's
58 now. It just seems bizarre when I say numbers like that.
Yeah, like man, that's 29 years. That's a long time to be. You was with him longer than you were with your parents.
That's yeah. I was
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, my wife and I we are 22 in right now, and it's
Oh,
like it's like, girl, I've been with you longer than I was with my mama and my daddy.
right, rocking
Th-
it.
this is crazy. Like we still think about that thing. So you in your marriage, it how did that end?
My husband took his last breath while we were on vacation. Had a major heart attack, and yeah, that's how that marriage ended. I guess successful. I mean, that's the goal, right? We stand there and say, till death
Until
do us part.
yeah, yeah.
And when my husband passed, I mean, it wasn't my first thought, but I was like, I laid up here and fulfilled some marriage vows. Like, wow.
I fulfilled the marriage vow. I have never heard. Wow. Now, how old were your children? What was the adjustment like? I know I've heard the story, but this is about connecting people to really hear. And I know people that follow you know your story.
Oh, so you
Um,
want me to give you the longer version of that? I gave you the short version. Sorry. Do
No,
you
no,
want?
no, no. I
Okay.
think that like it's the because I know y'all you had your ups and downs. You got the marriage stuff, and you still trying to becoming one. You have kids, different parenting styles, different. All that stuff is just the normal stuff.
For
But
sure.
this process now that you are going from a married woman to a widowed woman, what
Mhm.
was that like for you?
So let me back up and give
Okay.
Mark was a great husband, a great father. And I'm not saying that just because he's not here, because I've spoken with some people who didn't have great marriages.
Uh,
And unfortunately, the passing of their spouse was a point of liberation. And I respect that. I could go on and on with great stories about Mark. There was one time he went out for a hunting breakfast and came back and the house was everyone was asleep, and instead of banging on the windows, he shimmied his way into our sunroom and stayed out there sleeping until we were having breakfast, and then knocked on the door and scared all of us. Mark would take our children out hunting. Our daughter, very young age, and our son, he would be at every soccer game, he would be at every practice. He was a present dad. When Mark was an International Brotherhood of Electrical Worker, he and I was staying home full time with our children, he would travel and send back his money to his family and literally slept in a tent in a KOA to make sure he didn't spend too much money, to make sure he was a provider. My
wow.
husband was an amazing father, an amazing husband, amazing provider. Our last Valentine's Day, which we would have never known, I was at work one day and one of our friends came up and said, I need to talk to you. And I was like, what? Like, we just spoke. And he had me come to the front of the area where I was working. My husband had sent a quartet to come sing to me in the office and hand me roses.
Wow.
The man was a boss. So 5'9" played out well. So
5'9" played out real well.
it was a excellent decision. Excellent decision.
5'9", 5'9". The big things come in small packages.
He did.
So you talking about 29 years, 32 years of being with somebody. In that process, did you ever re-lose your identity, or were you
Re-
still able to be
I was
your
still
authentic self?
I was always my authentic self, but we were a team. We would call ourselves Team Fornwald. I had no problem with my husband being the head of our household. And the reason being, some people say, oh, I'm going to be the head of the household. You don't understand what God said, that you love your wife like Christ loved the church.
Right.
When you love your wife like Christ loved the church, why would you not want to submit to a man like that you know is going to protect you, is going to provide for you, is going to take care of you? I worked full time. I was also providing, but I knew how to respect my husband and
Hmm.
be able to be in places like that. I didn't have a problem. Sometimes when I was staying home full time, that man would come home so tired. I met him at the door and took off his boots because he was so tired he could not bend down to take them off. And I was caring for our children. I could be who I was and be that softness in that and support him, but also be strong in places that I need to stand up and protect our family. So that duality could exist. I think we give this impression that we have to be one or the other. And
Right.
sometimes one of the things I learned important from my mom in marriage was to keep all those outside people out of your marriage. Your marriage is you and your husband. Now, let me say, you're being abused, you're being taken advantage of. Those don't apply. But
For
I'm
sure.
just talking about every day getting on the phone, giving your girlfriend the 411 of everything that happened in your household. TMI.
Right.
TMI. Those are things you and your husband, your partner, your spouse need to work out the intricate details of communicating. If you're communicating with somebody else more than you communicating the person you married to, why are you married to them? What
Right.
is that relationship doing? So my husband and I spent a lot of time cultivating our relationship together that our children saw. And now, as they're of the age of dating and thinking, they leverage that about what they saw. They saw us arguing. They saw us make up. They saw us resolve conflict. They
Hmm.
saw us struggle economically. They saw us manage multiple rental properties. They saw us create a life and do and make sacrifices to do other different things.
That's really really good. I am really big on excuse me, on the examples.
Mm.
I'm really big on that. Y'all, how old are your children?
Um, my daughter 29 and our son 26.
Okay, and so they had great models.
I believe so. And in fact, I was having a conversation with my daughter the other day. She said, well, one of the things that you can say, one of the things that they're saying now, that if you had to do life over again, would you want to be your parents so you can tell them what they did wrong, or would you want them to parent you over? And she said, I would want you to parent me over. I'm satisfied with the parenting that I received.
Wow, that is, I mean, that right there probably warmed your heart.
It did. I was like, and also it's like, just as you spoke earlier, such a different set of conversations to have with your parents than you did before. I mean, my son will say like, well, we never got to watch, SpongeBob growing up, or we didn't get to watch things with profanity. And I was like, and he was like, you were right. I was like, I have no regrets, because once a child is exposed to things and their innocence is lost, you
Yeah.
can't pull that back.
Right.
Now, at the same time, we had a rental property around the corner. Those kids had to go pick up cigarette butts. They had to go cut the grass. They had to clean. They had to do their own laundry. So our goal as parents was to love them, to nurture them, and to give them skills that would help them be a productive part of society, and wanting them to have a relationship with Christ. They could choose to do
Mhm.
what they want to do later, but that was part of the necessary foundation for us.
That excuse me. That sounds like great. I mean, like that is the parenting 101 book. Regardless of the trials, the tribulations, the struggles, it's marriage. It's the word is saying two people becoming one. So it got to
Yeah.
be some kind of friction. It has to be some things that mend and bind and do all that other stuff. But kids see all that stuff. And you said
Yeah.
something that I think is very important. And I just want you to kind of touch on this again. How important do you believe at having healthy conflict resolution where they see the conflict, they see you resolve the conflict, and then they see you move beyond the conflict in a healthy manner?
I think that is so key. It is so important because if not, it's lopsided. It's delusional. It's not realistic, and I'm not setting them up for success. And they have seen some yelling.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not saying it was like, oh, I'm upset. Are you upset? No, we was screaming. Like, my husband was a yeller. I wasn't much of a yeller, but I was like, if you're gonna need to hear me, let me rise up. So
Right,
we're gonna do
right.
this. But there was never ever you calling me out of my name.
A
There was no
disrespect,
calling me no
a
B.
disrespectful,
Oh no! So let's be
yeah,
clear. There would be yelling like you're being pigheaded. You're not understanding, and you don't pay attention. But no, like cussing somebody out and calling them out their name because he did that one time. I said you don't get to talk to me and put your mouth on me like that. Like that you say for somebody in the street. But
right.
he had heard his parents behave like that. I was like, you get one time, and he locked that down. I was like, okay, so we could yell, we could scream, but I am your wife and you are
Keep it
my husband.
respectful. Right,
Because there, once you say things, you cannot pull them back. Those
right,
roots have taken place. That damage is done, and you may try to get past that. Because there was one thing I did that he told me that I wish that I didn't do. There was one time he was disciplining our son, and I felt like it had gone like too far, like I was concerned, and I intervened in that. And if I were to take that back, I would have left and went to the store and trusted that he would not have taken that boy's life and that he
right.
would be okay. But besides that, there was nothing else that was just like, I'm not going to do something that disregards you being my husband, the person that I am in this covenant bond with. But those heated discussions, my children knew that they weren't afraid for someone to be mad at somebody and then feel like they still didn't love them. Conflict is part of life. I don't know any
Right.
friendship, platonic, that doesn't go without its bumps and its waves, and knowing that you still can work through those things and the relationship can still exist.
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, again, the example is really good. My parents, I was raised by a single dad, so I didn't have that. But before my parents broke up, it was always it was very abusive. Um, and then on the other side, it was just me and him. So there was really no opportunity for me to learn conflict resolution
Mm,
in the moment, right? My conflict resolution was I see my dad put his hands on my mom, and I never ever thought that that was okay.
right.
It never sat well with me. Now, he was an amazing father. Like I am only the father that I am now because I had an amazing dad. But like you said about your dad, he wasn't perfect. He had his things, and I chose the things that I didn't want that I didn't carry on. Um, but that conflict resolution, I had to learn that the hard way.
Okay.
I had to learn that. And so my wife and I, we have these conflict resolutions. Our son sees us have these arguments, and he see us have these the bottom falling out, and he sees the yelling, and no disrespect, like I'm not calling her out of her name, and
Right.
she not calling, but the same thing. Yeah, you ain't even want to listen. You just did it, and you and then he sees us make up, and then he sees us move on. And so
Yes.
it's ingrained in his head that, oh, okay, I know how to have conflict resolution.
And that
Cause
is
I,
important. That's
yeah,
important in society. That's important at work. I don't see how we can have healthy relationships if I can't trust you to know that even when we have a disagreement, you won't walk away.
right.
Now, there are some relationships that they may dissolve because of what have you, but I cannot think of a friendship that I have now that we didn't have some type of disagreement and we learned to work through it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I have a question for
Hold
you.
on, I just want to show you my
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, oh. Hey, so we got my side note. My homeboy sent me something about a Jeep event happening in Virginia Beach at the latter part of the year. He's like, man, let's roll. He just got his Jeep, so he trying to.
That's what I went to last year, and that's what I posted on TikTok. Those were the videos from that. So yes,
Yeah,
okay,
I told my man, I was like, hey, my homegirl was at that joint. She went this year,
yep,
so yeah, we gonna come up. Um,
yes, all right,
yeah, we trying to, and we just trying to, he just got his Jeep,
mhm.
so he like, man, I want to be part of Jeep clubs. I want to do all this other stuff. So yeah, let's ride out. But
Okay.
I have a question, and I know we kind of skipped past
Sorry, I
this.
skipped around. My bad.
No. I skipped past it because we started talking about your marriage.
Okay.
But during your marriage, there was something that happened to you that probably
Mm,
shifted. That was probably a life altering situation. You care to talk about how that when you were diagnosed and the steps and the process and what was going on in your mind through that process?
absolutely, and thank you for that question. And one, get your mammograms, ladies. Get your mammograms. Once you're of age to get that mammogram, go every year.
Mm.
Go every year. If you have to find the traveling trailer wherever you can go, most of the time, if you don't have insurance, you can get them for free. Do that research and take care of yourself. Breast cancer was not a thing in my entire family, did not exist. And what we have circled back to that it was probably things that I was exposed to in the military.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it was because I was having the annual exam that they were able to find the breast cancer very early. There were already baselines to compare. So when something went awry, they could clearly see this was not the pattern. It
Right.
was having those mammograms that made it possible for them to identify that. When I had a mammogram and they called me, I was like, oh, y'all never supposed to call me. You're supposed to send me a little letter saying normal mammogram and see you next year. I was like, I'm sorry,
Right.
why are you calling me? And
Mm.
it was like, we saw something irregular. We have to do this, that, and the third. And I was like, this cannot be my portion. And but I was like, so my husband would go with me, and a girlfriend, Georgette, would go with me because my husband's focused on is his wife about to leave this world. My girlfriend could be that third party because I am a strong proponent that the sick is not the best person to take care of themselves. You may be in a situation that you have to, then record the conversation so when you go back later, you can listen to it because your mind is going to be all over the place and you may not be able to focus in on what you think you're focusing on.
Right.
I I have a tribe and I leverage them. And I remember, and even in all that leveraging, I went to a doctor's visit and they were supposed to take out the stitches from a biopsy. And when I came in, they said, we have your results. And I was like, the day I come in here by myself with nobody, you trying to tell me real strong stuff? And I was like, I wanted to run out of that room. And it was like, sit down. They're saying all this information. And they give me, I said, they was like, are you afraid? What do you want? I was like, I would like to have the diagnosis that you're reading from. And they gave me that. And I believe that our words are powerful. I
Mhm.
believe our
Mhm.
words are important. And they kept asking me, did you want to speak to somebody? I said, all I want is a diagnosis. And then I want to leave. And I went in my car and I started pronouncing every word that I knew that the word of God said about healing,
Mm.
about staying strong. I was in that car. If you would have walked past that car, you'd have thought I was
Would have
had
caught the spirit, would have passed slain in the spirit.
because I was screaming it out. I was
Mhm.
saying every word. I
Mhm.
was looking up in my phone because I needed to profess over myself. Because I knew when I got home and told my husband, if I didn't have that confidence in what I had believed in, everybody was going to go sideways. If I didn't have that confidence when I gave this information to my siblings, I needed to stand firm on what I said I believed my whole life
Mm.
because now it's game time. All the other stuff had been the practicing. Now what do you say you believe? What is the truth? And still having to walk through that. Being an ordained minister, having to stand in front of our congregation and tell them this is the diagnosis and this what we're going to work through, but this is what I believe my portion is. And it was a lot. It was hard. We had friends coming and family coming to take me to treatment because my husband needed to focus on staying at work, keeping health insurance, taking care of the children. being at a point that I could hardly walk. People coming from all
Mm.
different places to take me to treatment about an hour and a half away to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center so my husband could focus on other different things. And even in the midst of trying to have a schedule, there was one day that I messed up. And it was like, well, I can go down there, stay overnight, and then go to treatment. A friend called me and said, "Hey, Tina, I haven't been present. Is there anything I can do for you?" And I just cried. I was like, God, even in me trying to be everything in order, you saw where I dropped the ball. And she calls me. I said, Melissa, I have treatment tomorrow. And if you could take me, that's what I need. She lived an hour and a half away from me. She
Mm.
was at my house at Old Dark 30, ready to go to drive me another hour and a half. And I fell asleep because
Excuse me.
I was just so tired
Mm.
with the treatment and what it does to you. And it just, God just, once again, I'm trying to fight, have everything in order. And God is like, I got you, daughter. I got you in this. And it started. There was one day that I was at work. I had a situation. We had to go back to the oncologist. It was now turning into uterine cancer, which is a quick way to get out of here. And I had to have an emergency hysterectomy October of 2016. And it changed my life drastically. That is when I learned to go, I can't do everything. I remember we were getting near Thanksgiving and I didn't have the energy to stand up to cook dinner.
Mhm.
And my family having to jump and do everything. I was like, oh, we doing this every year. I'm no longer cooking all of Thanksgiving since I know now y'all could jump in. But there was one point in time where I had to get on sleep medication because my mind was racing. I wasn't sleeping. And the first time I took sleep medication, I was in the kitchen washing dishes and I just told my kids, I'm just gonna make a bed right here. I literally laid down on the kitchen floor and just said, I'm gonna take a nap right here because I had never taken sleep medicine. And my son picks me up and puts me in bed. It was my first time being part of a support group of other people going through something. Once again, community is important to me. And those things leveraged me and strengthened me to be able to endure.
That it's when God puts our faith on trial,
Mm,
it's always through those moments where you say, because you're saying, God, me now, like, but he said, but I gotta put that faith on trial, and you had an opportunity. You did the thing that that set up everything else. You went directly into praise. You were shocked, but you went into praise, and it's like, my God's bigger. I'm about to decree and declare. I'm about to stand on this word.
yes.
I'm about to, and God honors that. But even though you still had to process through it, because you never know who life you touched when you were at the hospital. You never know who had to watch you and watch you from a distance and see how strong you were in your walk and in your faith. You don't know how that changed your kids' perspective, on God. I mean, how many people right now who are angry at God because they lost a parent or lost a spouse or lost them because they didn't see the person that they were looking to have the faith in the God that they say that they trust.
Hmm.
So that is amazing to see, that you processed through that, that you stood on that God had your tribe together, and then it gave you access points to other people, other women who don't have the tribe and who are not as strong as you, and who are wavering, you know. So that created a space, and then a couple of years later, then you lost your husband.
Oh, no, no, not a couple of years later.
No.
October 2016,
Uh-huh.
emergency hysterectomy. November, Mark moves to Virginia because we were trying to move down there. 2016. Mark had a major heart attack in March of 2017.
Oh, this was like daisy chained.
But once
Oh,
again, I will share
wow.
God's faithfulness
Uh-huh.
is amazing. It was the week This is the week, the Monday before Mark passed. I was supposed to go on a work trip to Huntsville, Alabama. The job I had, I traveled a lot. And I was at work and I could hear God saying, you need to cancel that trip. And I was like, now this is 2017. We didn't have all this virtual conference room. You showed up in a place, you were there and doing stuff, and traveling was the thing that I had to do for work.
Mhm.
And I was like, I could hear a guy saying you need to cancel this trip. And I was like, okay, this could cost me my job. Like, I don't know how this is going to work. In my mind, like the plane was going to crash, and some guy was trying to, where was you at, whatever this day was. And I was like, I don't know, but I'm not doing this. And the night we were supposed to leave, I had contact back and forth with the people. It was like, you don't have to come. We'll do it a different way. We had our plane tickets. We were supposed to be there. I'm canceling everything. The guy, we were supposed to fly at the plane the next day. And he was like, how did you find me? I said, that's what Black women can do. I was like, and
We're
so
resourceful. We work things out.
we do. The next day, God was like, you need to spend time with your husband. I was like, I'm going to see Mark for Easter because he was in Virginia and I just didn't want to do all that. And then I could hear God again, you need to spend time with your husband. I was like, okay. So I called Mark and I was like, you want to get together now? What any man that ain't seen his wife in months going to say if I want to,
Yeah.
yes, where, what time? And so I was still in Pennsylvania. He was in Virginia and we met in Delaware, Dover, Delaware. There's a military base there. And I did not know that was going to be the last weekend I would ever spend with him.
Mm.
But I am so glad that I listened to God's prompting, because sometimes we only have one time to do what God tells us to do, and that moment passes. Sometimes you may get a repeat, sometimes you may get opportunity, but God knew that that was the weekend Mark Fornwald was going to take his last breath. And
Wow.
because I chose to listen to God's prompting, I was there when he had that major heart attack. We were in a hotel room and we're on a military base. So there are military people coming with weapons and stuff. And I'm telling them, who I am. Like, I'm an officer in the military. I'm at the end of the hallway, losing my mind, calling out to one of my siblings saying, but I love him. Is this how our story ends? And
Mm.
going to the hospital and then them saying you need to come into the room. And we know in Grey's Anatomy that no one wants to go into a room. Like, why are you talking to me? And through chain of events, him coding so many times and him leaving this world and devastated. We are 3.5 hours away from anywhere or anybody because we having us a lovers weekend. I didn't know this was his transition weekend. But
Mm.
my husband was a good man. And I am so, so very glad that I listened to God and he didn't die in that 1-bedroom apartment we had for him in Virginia, that he was with the woman that he has loved for so long and he left this world in my presence. He deserved that. Did it cost me? Whew. The things that I've had to work through myself to move and give my head space to not see that over and over. A lot of
Yes.
therapy, a lot of work, a lot
Yes.
of efforts, but I would not have wanted it any other way. I love him still now and have no problem with that. My husband was an amazing man, and I am grateful that I chose 5'9" and went with it.
Five
That
nine.
he no regrets, no regrets, whatever you want to say.
You know that
Won't
you
be
just said
glad.
you said that and it gave me chills. That it's like the obedience to God's word,
Mm.
the obedience to God's prompting, the obedience to say, okay, God, yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, you know the reason, but that's amazing. And I know the trauma that come out of that. Like when my mom passed, I wasn't there. My sister was there, and she had a massive heart attack, and so my sister had to relive those images. So she tried to drink those images off the back of her eyelids. And
I had a whole year with whiskey sours. I tell my liver, thank you. I remember showing up in church one day and it was like, Reverend Tina, you know you're doing good. I was like, you do know I'm drinking. Like, you do know my husband died in front of me. There was a whiskey sour waiting for me after church. Play games if you want to. Do you think I'm at home floating saying hallelujah? I am I am crawling through hot lava,
mm,
trying to trust God, trying to realize that when I lay in the bed, that my late husband does not no longer will lay in that bed. That a month after my husband passed, and now my brother's gone, my cousin's gone, and I'm in the house for the first time by myself. And I'm looking out our back window to a deer that my husband used to use to hunt with to practice. And I was like, he is never going to shoot another arrow into that deer again. And I remember telling God, this some bullshiggity right here. Like,
Right.
like this is trash. And I this is the diary that I kept the year that Mark passed. And I remember God saying, the plans that I have for you are good. And I was like, that is some trash. That like how? Like I just got my uterus ripped out like a couple of weeks ago. And I went through breast cancer. And now my husband died. How you define good? Help me understand that, God. Now I was drinking tea. We hadn't got to a whiskey sour yet that part of the day. And God,
He is faithful.
he said, Tina, I knew Mark was going to die and leave you March 2017. And because I knew this and I love you, I had been preparing. And my heart responded, God, how? How were you preparing? And when I get the gumption to write the book, there are 21 different things that God told me, and I wrote them down and downloaded immediately. And after that, I wrote, and these are just a few of the things that God decided to reveal to me as I complained, as life. And there were so many things that he revealed, but that got to a point, the cross. It got the point across to me. The revelation took the sting out of death. And when the miracle that he made for me like that, I was in a daily space in that hospital with Mark dying, and God was over me again. I still don't like that Mark has died, but this God has shown me that he loves me and he is with me and that he is here and he is guiding me and his plan is good.
Woo. Write that book.
I'm
I'm, I'm,
trying.
I'm write the book.
I'm trying.
I, I, I know it's going to be probably one of the hardest things that you ever do, but you've already accomplished the hard thing. The hard thing was surviving through it. The hard thing was making sure that you didn't go off the deep end and your kids watch you go sideways and go crazy, and now they got to come and visit you in some ward somewhere, and now they're off out here wilding. You've done the hard thing. You accomplished the bit. Get it out because it's going to touch so many lives.
Thank you. And I think about how many people have written a book about this or that. And I'm like, what difference does one other book make? But in the beginning, when I talked about one of the last three things God has given me to do, it is writing this book. And that is one of my assignments. And I am trying to get that done this year. That is my goal, some way, somehow, to do that. That is what I'm working on.
Well, I'm going to pray that God gives you the time to be able to sit in his presence and just write it.
Mm. Amen.
That
I
that
receive that.
that he if it's 5 minutes or if it's 12 minutes or if it's 3 hours, that whatever time that you start to put that pen to the paper, it's just going to flow.
Mm.
And I pray for that. I pray that God gives that to you because there is something dynamic in that book that's going to be life changing for so many people.
Amen. I receive that.
So so I am I'm gonna be praying for that, and I'm gonna be checking on you too. We accountability people now. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
we
came
we
through with the vision book. I came through.
we done teamed up, and we got vision boards. We got
I
stuff
haven't.
going.
Have I seen your pictures though, sir?
You did? I didn't send it to you. Hold on.
I'm a,
Hold on. Oh, my phone's dead. If I didn't send it to you, I would send it to you. But here it is. I'm
okay.
gonna send, I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay. I have not seen that. All right. All right. All right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna send it to you. So in that, like, so I'm in the. It ain't about me, But I met with my dissertation coach yesterday, so
Okay.
we on board, and everything is going good. But I just love your story. So out of this, you birthed some things
Mm.
out of all this, right? Because at one point, I know you thought that you were the only person going through this. Nobody else, God. It's just me. Oh man, it's just me. And then you birth what?
You know, I hate to say this. I knew it wasn't only me because when the funeral was over, well, even before that, women that I knew that were widows reached out to me and I reached out to them.
Okay.
I am a huge proponent of community. I am not ever trying to restart something somebody else did. Give me the short version. Show me how to leapfrog. Show me how to leverage your experience to do the next. There were widows coming to me and saying, I need to talk with you, or I reached out to them. So I knew instantly I needed to figure out how to do this because the potential to stay in a muck and mire was heavy and very possible of happening. The
Hmm.
first widow reached out to me the week of Mark's funeral. She said, because her husband had just recently passed, she said, I can't go to that funeral, but I can give you access to my therapist. And I start seeing a therapist for the first time because I realized when we were having children, I was reading books on what to expect when you're expecting,
Hate
did
that
all
book.
this. What I have no idea what it's like to be a widow. I'm in uncharted territory. I started reading books. The book that I read the most is I Wasn't Ready to Say Goodbye. There's a stack of books that I'm reading right here. And that need for knowledge and understanding how to navigate this uncharted landscape, I needed to know how to be successful. I couldn't make grieving go away because that's not a thing, but I can understand that how my brain is impacted by grief, that my prefrontal cortex and my amygdala, how that it responds to grief and trauma. And now when I'm having grief fog, I know what that is because that's a natural part of grieving.
Hmm.
And those things were important for me to leverage other people. And so now the evolving in my own process, God allowed me to one night speak to somebody who had recently lost their spouse. And when I got off the phone, God said, what are you going to do for the next person? I was like, ain't nobody calling me this late at night. We going to bed. What? No. And God was like, no, the next person. And I was like, oh, the next scenario, the next situation. And out of that, honoring my late husband, founded a nonprofit, Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, which is a registered 501c3 nonprofit. Board members, and actually, we're having our first. Oh, I was like, hold on, what did I do on the screen? We're having our first board meeting today, and we serve the community, we serve people by one in the idea of providing social media content, because when people are grieving, we don't always know how to reach out to other people and we go to the internet. So we have a weekly podcast that comes out across 15 different podcasting applications. We
Hmm.
have content across 6 social media platforms, and we have over 4 million views across 106 countries, because our world has just experienced a pandemic and we have hurting people that don't have a voice. They may have had to relocate. And so, between watching our podcast, which you can see on our website or on our YouTube channel, it's audible on all of the other different social platforms. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, and you can find our information. You can plug in, you can share those videos with somebody else who doesn't understand your grief and you don't know how to articulate it, but they can listen to a podcast where I'm talking to my siblings or talking to a family member and understand that's how I feel. That's how I need you to show up for me. The second way in which we support people is through resources. We have tons of people that have written books, mental health professionals. You can go to our website and hit resources and find people that I found are value added. And the third way in which we support people is with mental health events. And I say mental health because your mind is what is struggling in that grief journey. And if
Right.
we don't address the challenges mentally, then we have the potential to linger in depression or linger into things that will hurt us and have unhealthy coping skills. So we
Mhm.
have a every month we have a men's only grief support meeting, which is hosted by a widower, Mr. James Price. I host a meeting on the last Thursday of the month. Those events are located in on our website, and you can select that and participate. We have a confidential grief Discord because when you are grieving, you don't sleep. You need a safe space to talk and to vent and to look for support. We have a confidential grief support group on Facebook. We also do mental health events. And one of my favorite events, I love them all, but one that I think is just really encouraging is Dylan. Walk for Love. It is the first week of August, and we ask people to walk 1 mile a day and then post hashtag Walk for Love, picture where you were walking, and your loved one's name. When someone you love transitions from this world, you often are in spaces where it seems weird that you can't mention their name or say something about them.
Mhm.
But when we provide a space where you can say their name out loud, and when you're grieving, you are not often taking care of your own well being, and you need to exercise. You need some vitamin D. So, the first week of August, to see people posting literally around the world, hashtag Walk for Love on all social media platforms, hashtag their loved one's name. It is a movement that you know you are not alone in this journey. We have mental health events on preparing for the holidays because grief has a different sense of that. We actually have a local church that donated land to us, and we're going to have a butterfly release ceremony. We're developing
Awesome.
a memorial garden and other different things for people to know we celebrate our ancestors. We celebrate the people that we love. Your love doesn't cease when that person no longer walks this world, and you're not alone in trying to process how do you continue living and existing and having a life that thrives. And that is important. And that's the work that we do. It is a nonprofit, and the work that we do is a huge proponent of people donating and supporting and us being good stewards of the funds that are given to us. And we actually have a sponsorship program where people that have businesses, because when you hear 4 million views over 106 countries, if you have a business that you're trying to do and trying to have that reach, you can have that by leveraging our community and being able to support us and
Mhm.
also benefit your business.
Wow. I say this. Look, everybody. I can vouch for who she is. Uh, Over the last several months, we've been in spaces. I've seen comments. I've seen people talk to her. I've seen her walk people through crises. I done heard the information. She is grounded in God. She is always. Please, if you know somebody that's grieving, if you are grieving yourself and don't know where to start, start with the information that she just gave. Widowhood Real Talk with Tina. Google it, pull her up on all their social media. You might not be able to get in contact with her directly, but you can still get in contact with her information, which is just as good. And if please don't sit in your space wondering how you're gonna get out of your space when there's a lifeline that's just been tossed to you to get out of your space. So be mindful, people. Like, really support anything that she does and everything that she does. Get out here, support it. Lead your people to that are in these spaces, because we it may not be a spouse, but it still may be a loved one. Grief is grief, and so
Thank you for
please
mentioning that.
maximize these resources.
And thank you for mentioning. Let me circle back to two things, if I may.
Hmm.
One, I intentionally chose the word widowhood. I'm from Chicago. Hood means family.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
am the widow, but the hood of that is every relationship that was with my husband. My husband, the widow, died. The hood is my children, their dad died. My brother had siblings, their brother died. My husband was someone's uncle, someone's cousin,
Right.
someone's co worker. Yes, me, the widow, I'm impacted, but our entire tribe was impacted. So grief is not just the passing of a widow, but it is that entire community. And we do provide information for people no matter what that loss is. And some of that loss is divorce. Some of that loss is your body not showing up the way that it used to because I endured breast cancer. Some of that is losing your job. Some of that is dealing with the stress of the society that we are in. So that conversation of grief, unfortunately, has a broader scope than the passing of my husband. If I'm not your jam, I am most likely can connect you to someone else that has that grief or that support mechanism that you're looking for, and to connect you with them.
Yes, that was. Look, y'all. My whole goal for doing these shows is to kind of to connect you with resources and people who are out here doing things that are making a difference. Please take advantage of all the resources. I have one last question for you before we tap out of here.
Okay.
What is something that you didn't pay attention to growing up that you had to learn the hard way as you got older?
Something I didn't pay attention to growing up, that I am worth it.
Mm.
That when God created me, I was good at that moment. I let too many other things get in my ear that I had to wrestle and tune into that. And I know that God was calling me when I was a young girl. There was a school church bus that would drive past the house. My parents didn't take me to church. I saw that bus and I got the phone number and called them and scheduled a pickup for myself. And that bus came and I got dressed. And my dad was like, "Where are you going? To church?" He was like, "How you getting there? The bus just came." And he looked at me. I knew what I was getting was not enough. Whatever was showing up in life was not enough for what I needed to be the fullness of who I was. And that pulled me, God drew me, and I went after that. Ain't been a perfect Christian, ain't been a perfect person, but I know God loves me and I do my best to show up. I got skeletons in the closet we are not talking about on this podcast, and nobody needs to know that.
Don't we all?
But I know in the core of who I am, I didn't know that, and I've learned that along the way of this journey of life.
That is, I mean, know that you have worth and that you have value. Is there
Yes.
anything else you want to say to the people before we tap out?
You know, thank you for this invitation to share and make it official. I'm looking for you to be on my podcast. We did a TikTok live, but I'm looking for you to be on my podcast platform. And I would like to extend that invitation to you.
You anytime.
I want to say thank you for creating a safe space for people to talk and to share and to be able to reach out and to connect with people they may have never connected with if they did not land on Maurice Ball's podcast and listen to the conversations, because resources, they can change your life. They have the potential to change whatever perspective you thought you knew when you hear something different and realize there's more out there than I considered. And I just say thank you for taking the time to listen to this conversation. Allow me to speak things that I hope that are encouraging to you. And if there's a way in which our services or the things that we can do to let you know you are not alone, please reach out. My email address is widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com. Wherever you platform you're on, look up Widowhood Real Talk with Tina and see the content that we have. And let us be able to be on this journey with you.
Amazing. You heard it here first. Hey, I love you like a play cousin, and I'm out. Peace.